Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Writers and Authors Show that we do every second Wednesday with our friends over at Books Forward. And today we're very excited to welcome back Sid Balman. We first met him with the first of his trilogy, Seventh Flag, then again with his second novel in the trilogy, Murmuration. And today we're so happy because he's joining us with the third novel in the series called Algorithms. That will be out August 1st, 2023, but you can get it now by pre-ordering. So you can go to sidbalman.com, Amazon, all those places, bookshop.org. We love them too, especially if you want to get books in your local bookstore and support your local bookstores. But first, welcome back, Sid. How are you?
Oh, thank you. It's so great to be back. Seems like yesterday, but it's been a couple years.
Mm-hmm. I think it's cool because every time we talk to you, we're somewhere in the Southwest.
Well, you gotta love it out here.
Yeah. So you're in West Texas, right? You're out by Big Bend National Park, beautiful, beautiful area, and we're in West Texas recording today. When this airs, we won't. We might be here. You never know. But we're in Lubbock. So, is this still considered West Texas?
Yes.
Okay, and you've been here, right?
Oh yeah, and I'm hoping to be there for a book event when the first book comes out. This third book.
Oh, third book. Yeah, this is you got a trilogy. So, are you going to do a book tour?
Yes. This is going to. We've tried all different kinds of formulas. This one is we're going to try smaller independent bookstores throughout the Southwest. So we'll launch here with the home team, Front Street Books in Alpine, Texas, where I live.
Nice.
And then go on to Tucson and
nice.
Flagstaff and Amarillo, possibly Lubbock, Dallas, Austin, Seguin, and San Angelo.
Oh, I have to tell you, last year we thought of you. We were driving from Lubbock, actually. We were on our way to Oregon, so we decided to go through Tucson to get to Oregon because that's what everybody does. But it was winter, I think, for some. Yeah, it was kind of wintry spring. And but we went through I'm trying to think. There was some wildlife refuge we went to, like southwest, but ended up going past Carlsbad Caverns and Guadalupe National Park. We were driving through there and you could see the shadow of the mountain. And I'm like, Del, Texas, isn't this where Sid's place is? This is like Sid's country right here. And it's nighttime, but we had a full moon shining.
Del City, yeah. That's where those books start.
So tell everybody, let's go, like, kind of for new listeners, let's kind of give an overview of the Seventh Flag trilogy, because that really is the trilogy name, and start with Seventh Flag. I know the very first time you were on the show, the first thing we started talking about was camels in the desert.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that conversation. It was like the highlight. Because it's like nobody talks about camels in the American desert, but you sure did. So it was more historical. But tell everybody about Dell, because it's not Dell Computers, by the way.
No. Well, as you said, it's a trilogy. It starts just after World War II, and the third book goes 30 years into the future. And the beating heart of the trilogy, these novels, takes place in Del City, Texas, which is exactly where you described. It's at the base of the Guadalupe Mountains, about 80 miles east of El Paso, town about 400 people. An iconic place in America. And a lot of iconic places and iconic activities are the platform that I rest a lot of the story on, because in the end, it's a book about what links us all together rather than what separates us, as we're seeing. But it looks at two families. One is a prosperous, after the war, one is a prosperous ranching family, and one is a family of Syrian Muslim immigrants who people might not know, but Texas has the largest Muslim population in the country. And one of the reasons, and that's what I use, is that back in the mid 1800s, the United States launched something called the U.S. Camel Corps, a division of the cavalry, and they shipped bought a bunch of camels in the Middle East and camel handlers, and brought them to Indianola, just south of Houston, and they migrated into the West. That's how this family of Syrian Muslim immigrants gets there. The camels are still around. The camels are still around. So it's these two families. It doesn't take place by a long shot all in West Texas. These families, the book ultimately is about this radicalization we have seen progress over the decades to where we are today, seeing such things as the assault on the Capitol and the dangerous divisions in our country. So the book is about this radicalism that is plaguing the world, plaguing America, and then also what it means to be an American, and that's to be an American then and today and in the future. So the books follow the travails of 4 generations of these two families as they engage in iconic activities like playing football in West Texas, joining the military, ranching, just all kinds of things. And sort of traces the politics of the country, the temperature of the country along the way through these generations. So the first book sort of sets it up. It begins, it ends with 9/11. The second book picks up there, and it looks at the experience in Somalia, same family members, particularly the one character who sort of organically emerged, certainly my favorite, and has organically emerged as the main character, Adamar Zarkan, who is a Syrian Muslim, Texan American, and she's the anchor of the story. She goes to West Point. She becomes a sniper. She ends up based in Somalia, and her translator is a Somali man, Charlie Christmas. And this book
I remember this, yeah.
sort of roams into, Kenya, the refugee experience in Kenya, because the refugee experience is so central, really, to all of us, except for people who are indigenous to this country. And goes up to Minnesota, which is has the largest Somali population in the country. And, again, delves into these issues of radicalism. One of the family members becomes an ISIS recruit, and it goes, it sort of wanders into the Southwest and starts to really merge into what we see today, what I call domestic terrorism. The kinds of shootings we're seeing with sickening regularity, why people are doing that, what radical like that, so that book sort of roams into the West, goes through South Dakota, it intersects, and this is really in the first book it didn't have this, but this is where themes about the indigenous in this country. I spent, I did a lot of research with the Lakota Sioux in South Dakota, and then also for the third book with the Humara in northern Mexico. That's what they're called. That's what we call them, but they prefer to be called the Rara Murray. Means the running people. Maybe you've seen pictures of them. They run hundreds of miles through the desert. And the reason that I became affixed on indigenous people and their resiliency, and that sort of led into the third book, is that, these are people who have survived in a certain way forever. I mean, the Sioux in South Dakota, of course, they were beset by, encroached upon by modern problems, but the Rara Murray really had not. They just kind of receded into the mountains around Creel in Chihuahua State. And, as going into the third book, which takes place 30 years in the future after what I call the fall, the end of civilization as we know it, primarily because of technology run amok, which is very relevant now with ChatGPT.
Really?
and that, so I had and I'm sort of going, all of these are points we can come back to, but I had I guess really a true muse for the third book. A friend who has some indigenous background, some Irish background, and she really opened my eyes to this whole notion of the indigenous way of life and how they're so uniquely positioned to survive something like the fall of civilization, because they've been so basic. It's been so basic for them most of their lives. That's a little, in a nutshell. That's a lot.
You've in all three books have put women at the forefront of as strength, which is something I know Nancy has read Algorithms, and she just kept. I mean, she ruins books for me. She really does, but it's a good thing when she ruins books for me, and then I have to wait a little bit and then go read them, because she's like, "You're not going to believe what Sid just wrote now." I'm like, "I do believe it." You can go there, but you put women at the forefront, and before we get to that point, I do want to give people a little bit of your background too. That you're a Pulitzer-nominated national security correspondent, also writer in residence at Sul Ross State University. You've covered wars in the Persian Gulf, Somalia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Kosovo. I didn't even say that right, excuse me. And you've also traveled with American presidents, secretaries of states. So when we talk, I want people to understand your background, that this isn't you just doing historical research. You know what I mean?
Oh, no, it's I mean, it's, people ask me, and I spoke about this subject at a conference in Fort Worth a couple of weeks ago about the bridge between journalism and fiction. And every journalist, you've probably heard me say this before, sort of a standard talking point, but every journalist thinks they have a story in their back pocket. And that's kind of what spurred me on to write this first book. I felt like I had a lot of stories to tell. And all three books are infused with my experiences in Texas or in Somalia, or, writing about and working with violent extremism and violent extremists. So, I mean, if people, it's funny, a little game I play is I always sort of put myself in the book, my actual self, as a cameo. And so there may be a news conference, for example, before the Iraq War, and the press secretary will call on journalists, and he'll call on Sid Balman.
Oh, there you go. See,
always a little cameo by me.
Yeah, but traveling and seeing the world and gives you that perspective of, yeah, this stuff can really happen. And when we talk about, radicalization and radicalization, all of this shootings, like we were talking about, the Capitol being overthrown, and all of these things that happen, you've witnessed a lot of it and seen it and understand what the presidential responsibilities are and how it can be misused as well. I think Nancy was saying you covered misuse, especially in algorithms. I think I look at it, when we look
Good choice of words, Lisa.
They email me, I don't care. When you look at the internet now and algorithms, I thought was such, when I saw you use that as a title, I was like, yeah, because I almost feel like it's a form of whitewashing and programming human beings in this really corrupt way. It's really, really sick, actually, when you look at not just, we all use Google and marketing and all of that, but it's gone a bit beyond. And then now we're like, oh, Sid, why don't you write a book on AI? Come on, I'm sure they can have your experience and just, write it. So we're getting into this weird zone. And when you think at the same time, we have governments with people that don't even know how to use the internet, how to even type an email. and don't understand the power of AI. They don't, I mean, we've had people in big leadership roles, doesn't mean that they led, who don't understand the internet. Did that come to play for you in writing algorithms? I'm about to get into our rant.
Well, very much. So we're just, we're on the final before the book is now going to go to the printer. And so they call it it's now the fourth pages, they call it. And I've been really focusing the last few months, in part because of school, but just because of interest, on this, on Chat GPT. And it when I wrote algorithms a year ago, it wasn't really even available to, like it is now. But as I was getting ready to give the final sign off on the book, I said, wait a second, I think I would be remiss if we didn't put a few references to chat in there. So we pulled it back, I put in a few more references, and now it's ready to go. But I think that, chat and algorithms, it's all sort of shorthand for the way that, in my mind, the digital world is subsuming the natural world, certainly. And how, this scary way in which chat can complete computer code for a programmer, do all sorts of things. And that's really what's at the heart. That's what leads to the fall of civilization in algorithms, is that it just runs amok and they can't do anything. Whether it's on the farm in West Texas where the internet linked pivot sprinkler system isn't working properly, or whether the the South Korean military, because of AI, misreads and it triggers a catastrophe. And of course, there's along with all these things tracking together, is the digital coup, if you will, the machine coup. Things what people like Stanley Herbert wrote about and others. Or it's climate. Climate plays a big role in algorithms too, the climate change and the disasters that are coming, and of course radicalization. And that's, I say it was sort of fun to look at it and predict it, but it's sort of scary the way it's kind of coming true.
Well, I wonder about it too, because it's interesting, with us traveling, we go into different situations of what happens internet wise. Like, as you know, we actually had to postpone recording your interview with you because of an internet outage. And what happens is what we see as we travel, we pet sit as we travel, and people are controlling everything by their phone. And we were in a circumstance in one place where what was happening with heating in Wisconsin winter, by the way, through a snowstorm, what was happening there versus what they were seeing on their phone was two different things. And I had to take photos, like show them, look, there's something wrong. There's no heat. It's cold. And so, but what's happening on their phone is not, so it's not perfect. And people run things on the internet and they'll leave their house and wonder why suddenly, if there's an internet outage, your irrigation doesn't work. Your security cameras don't work. Let's go through the list of things that, and it could be just,
or your pet isn't getting fed from the automatic feeder.
Yeah. So there's these things that people are doing just on the most basic things, thinking internet is always there. And I'm always like, I carry a day timer. Like, I handwrite things because we know internet goes out. There's hurricanes, there's floods, we've been through tornadoes even on this tour, and we're like, things go out and go wrong. And if you don't have that sensibility of how the land works, like you're talking about the indigenous people, you're up a little creek. But I also think with all of this, we also have the other side. Like, I look at, and I'm not being anti-elder, I just don't believe we should have elders running countries who don't understand the internet or AI, when on the other side, we do have extremist groups and the radicals, like you're saying, who understand how to use WhatsApp and all these other and I know you've got a big background in understanding that when you can see that this is being used for human trafficking, it is being used to control others in all kinds of situations in different worlds, different countries, I should say. So we have all of this going on. And so when do those people meet with what's going on? Yet it's not always just internet, right? It's not just Google. It is like data, and it's such a weird world because they can play with satellites and cell phone technology, but I feel like they're all connected because sometimes when El Chapo got put to prison, we were in the town where they dropped him off.
Oh, that
and
was
when
cool.
he flew in, everything went out.
Cool.
Everything, lights out.
They didn't
Internet,
tell you,
cell phone, everything went
obviously.
out. And then once the helicopter left, everything came back on. And we know a lady who's in law enforcement, and she was actually at that state prison or that supermax prison with Kaczynski.
Yeah.
And when they brought him in, she got locked in to their they have a thing for
Holding
rations,
cell.
holding like a thing for if the apocalypse happens, they have food for these prisoners. She got locked in there until he was safely put in his cell because of escaping. So they knocked everything out, like cell and internet. So how, like when you talk about, I know this is like 20 questions in one, but I'm trying to get to like, it's all frigging connected. And
they can't tell you, obviously, that they're going to take everything down when
no,
they're
but I
moving
mean,
someone.
but when you think about algorithms and here's all this digital stuff, can it be taken out through the internet and through data, or like, can it all meet and take us out like you were writing about? Like,
I think the scary part is that I think there will be a time when machines can do it without human command. That's the essence of smart machines, right? I'm a long way from an expert, but I'm learning more about it. So in algorithms, the way it happens is that the algorithms have sort of taken hold, and the president's nuclear war is the presidents of China, Russia, the UK, and America are meeting and having a virtual meeting, and they're on the verge of pushing the nuclear button when the hacker group, Anonymous, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, but the hacker group Anonymous intervenes and turns off the internet, essentially. It suspends disbelief a little bit, but it's fiction. So, and that's when the fall happens, and the world just falls into this into these sort of self-ruling fiefdoms all over the world. And of course, the ones I concentrate are the Laws and the Zarkans in West Texas. Their allies in the Murmuration people in northern Mexico, the Lakota Sioux in South Dakota. And then, it's all sort of microcosm for everything else in the world. We don't see what's going on elsewhere. But their arch enemy is this group of highly radicalized women called the Sisterhood. And it's led by, ironically enough, an indigenous woman who was, lived the horrible life on a reservation. A woman is 3 times more likely to be raped on a reservation than any other woman anywhere else in this country.
Yep.
And she leads this sect of women warriors, and that's the sort of the conflict, and what they are all going after are the algorithms to sort of get things started again. And the way that, and the device I use for that, and this just came to me. I was driving around and was listening to a radio show and a song about this whale. His name is 52 Blue. It's a real whale. It's an actual whale that they tag, and they've been following for for decades, and it's become sort of a cult hero, a social media hero, and there's a band that has done a very good kind of a rock song about 52 Blue. And I was thinking about that and sort of how to tie it in. And again, my muse helped me a little bit. So there's the way that these algorithms have kind of been compacted is that there's a marine acoustics scientist in Washington, based on a real person. Everything's based on real people, who sort of sees things coming. And her job is to monitor a specific undersea cable, internet cable, that carries all the traffic of the internet. Of course, that doesn't actually exist, but again, it's fiction.
We do have underlying cables going to India with internet.
Oh, we have them everywhere, but there's not just one.
Yeah.
So what she does is she cuts into the cable. She sees the apocalypse coming. She cuts into the cable, downloads everything, all the algorithms, into a box of several hard drives, and implants them into the back fin of this whale, 52 Blue. And so while this is a journey of the laws and the Zarkans and the Native Americans, it's also a journey. Several sections of the book are about the journey of this sentient whale that has this sort of mythical connection, this sort of collective unconscious connection to a 12-year-old girl in West Texas who happens to be Adamar Zarkan's granddaughter. And I don't want to bore your listeners, but just a short passage can really explain it better than I can. Let me just read this. So this is the young girl's name is Arwen. She's Adamar Zarkan's great granddaughter, and she has just had a conversation with one of these Raramuri people, and she's sort of reflecting. And this, I guess, is really kind of the kernel of the book that connects all of these concepts. So I read it. It's very short, 2 paragraphs. It made sense to the young girl who had experienced that profound linkage in her psychic connection to 52 Blue, but she didn't have the term. Terra algorithm. There's another term that applies to the phenomenon of the Raramuri and the unique purpose they and other indigenous people, like White Eagle's origin tribes of the Mountain West, have in the universe. Mathematicians who study chaos theory, which seeks to explain connections between seemingly random occurrences, refer to it as the butterfly effect. Meteorologist Edward Lorenz coined the term in the 1960s, reasoning that small changes in atmospheric conditions could have dramatic impacts on weather thousands of miles away, like carbon emissions in China, triggering a chain of events that, over time, melt polar ice. It is as if there's a linear relationship between a small gust of air from the wing of a butterfly and something else on the other side of the world. As if a giant blue whale deep in the Pacific Ocean leaps from the water and a 12-year-old redheaded girl in West Texas dreams about it. Or a grotesque contest in a makeshift New Mexico bullring is countered in the calculus of the earth by a peaceful, centuries-old game of Rala Chipame. That is why the Raramuri endure. They are the counterweight on the other end of the existential teeter-totter that maintains balance in the universe.
Wow, that's so true. The butterfly effect. I haven't heard that for ever.
Long time.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't there a band name of that too? No, I love that because it's so true. These little things and these theories of chaos and understanding it, because it's never clean.
That was, again, I mentioned this muse, but that was this muse I had. But that was something she had sort of turned me on to, was that whole idea of kind of what I just read.
It goes right perfect after Murmuration. You've got all the birds and the butterflies now and a whale. So I was like, I'm laughing. Our background, for those listening, our Zoom background, Nancy and I have West Texas and then Sid's cover with the blue whale. So it's like, it's like, wow, to be able to do that. But it's, it's really, when you think about these small things and the ripple effect, how wide something can go, right? And how fast once it starts to happen, you know?
And we're talking about artificial intelligence. I mean, just look how quickly it's moving. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, Elon Musk and others issued a public letter calling on the government to bring a pause to all AI because they don't understand it. And if you read about the people who are doing it, they don't really even understand it. And then
No,
And there's already lawsuits about it. They're already suing each other over
and the thing is,
copywritten, there's copyrights over content that AI did and stole from somebody else. And so like people's voices, journalists are getting it. I mean, people, it's getting a little crazy.
Well, AI doesn't, at this point, isn't doing anything original. It's just bringing together. But it will start doing things that it produces on its own.
Sid, do you remember Y2K? And everybody was scared of all of that. And I at that point went, I'm ready for that. Like I'm cool if we pull the plug on this stuff now, because just let me go and be on a farm and land and but here we are doing all this digital stuff, right? So that went out the window. But if we think about that fear of Y2K, and then everybody's telling us to go buy our peanut butter flour and whatever stuff and all of that. And now we think about Y2K was only 23 years ago, barely 23 years ago. Like, look how quick that is. That is actually fast.
I don't think we should live in fear, but we should live in knowledge, and we should keep our eyes open and understand the possibilities. And just because you drive a whatever car and you go to this corporate building every day and you do your 12 hours or whatever it is of work doesn't make you right. It just makes that's what you do. You make money to feed your family. How about just step outside of your own life and start looking at the repercussions? What is it that we do that
You're not
hurts the
very
land?
good at being a radical now.
I think it's pretty radical, actually.
No, but
to step outside your own life and start looking at the connection to yourself and the world you live in, and even the worlds beyond that, other planets. How about looking at it as huge, like the whole universe, not just Earth?
It's the web of life.
It's the whole ball of wax, so to speak. And in thinking about what you do, why you do it, how you do it, and is there a better way? Now, you're not always going to know a better way, but most of us do know the wrong way. We do know that. It's the easy way.
Well, I want to say this, go with what you're saying, and then also said you talked about nature, right, and climate, and all of this being connected.
Oh, yeah.
And what Nancy is saying too, the web of life, you go to a national park and you talk with a park ranger or do any of those ranger programs, and they'll start telling you about the web of life and make pre-COVID, everybody hold hands and understand that if you raise your hand, this is going to do this over here. So like if you kill a certain yucca plant in the desert, then there's a skipper butterfly that's going to die. There's one specific yucca outside in Anza-Borrego Desert, so it's Colorado Desert. And if you kill this yucca, which we're getting in trouble because of so much housing projects and stuff, but you kill that, this butterfly, this little skipper butterfly will die. And the century plant that it really is only blooms once, or not a century, once every 100 years. And this butterfly knows about this, and this whole cycle happens. That plant dies, that dies, and then they will not exist anymore. So it's like we're always trying to explain this concept in nature because we're connected to that as human beings. And I think that's kind of ties into what you're doing with algorithm, because we do have a hand in it, but as soon as we're not conscious, it will take over, because eventually we're the ones who started this whole algorithm, even though nature has that. It's like a domino effect. It can move so fast and so quickly. So I think that's what's cool about what you've read, like to get people to be aware. I mean, I know
Well,
you're writing for entertainment too,
of
but
course.
I'm just saying.
I mean, there's one, so sort of relevant to what you just said. There's one scene in the book where when this 12-year-old redheaded girl um, is down in Big Bend National Park, and of course, like all my books, there's a lot of stuff about the Southwest and about West Texas, but it's happens to be a time when the 17-year cicada is supposed to emerge.
Oh yeah, cool.
You know, down here we don't really. It's more of an East Coast phenomenon, but there's some of it here. And so she is you know waiting for these cicadas to come out, and because of climatic changes and various things, the a cicada does emerge, but it's completely charred and desiccated. And you know, it's this great sort of natural phenomenon that just stops. And you know, what impact is that going to have on other things? And that's what the Terra algorithm means. I mean, it's a play on words. So there's algorithms, and there's this Terra algorithm, which Terra Earth, the Earth algorithm, something that we're all connected to. And in this book, it provides a sort of telepathic connection between, for example, the whale and the young girl. It's this Terra.
But we do have it. You know, if you think, so the running people, right? And you think about the indigenous people have always moved. So in central Arizona, Tonto National Monument has the history of the Salida people, or Salado. And Salida's in Colorado. I got to get my names here. And they say like they just disappeared. We don't know if it was hunting, if it was this. And I'm like, well, if you look, the Arizona Museum, State of Arizona Museum in Tucson has this incredible Native American pottery collection, which we were very lucky to be able to go behind in the archives with the main archive dude, the pottery dude, like literally years ago, opening up all and seeing all this ancient pottery. And he was showing us this map of the migration of all the indigenous people and how they moved and how they had to resources. Is it hunting? Is it water? Is it change in land? Or was it white people coming through and you know, messing with them, you know? So they kind of had that connection of always moving. And I just kind of feel like when you talk about the Terra and there's a DNA thing, I always say, we as human beings end up going to places, and sometimes you're going to find a connection that you didn't understand why. And I think it goes back to our DNA in some reason. So like we, you know, the Mexican-American War, here we are, America, and you're on the border. How many families do you think have this internal DNA magnetic drive, like birds who migrate, right? They know where they're going. Why wouldn't humans have that DNA connection and that magnetic force to travel? Yes, for necessity, like I was saying, with the thought of people moving.
Yeah, but that's thought out.
Yeah, but it could be from past experience. There's this DNA that humans have. If you come from Mexico, today's Mexico, but your family was over the border, isn't there a pull to go there because your DNA comes from there? What do you think of that? Not trying to get woo-woo. I'm just saying.
Well, you know, sometimes we ignore the most obvious things. And certainly you know, this sort of DNA proclivity you might have to do something that centuries of your people have done. It just doesn't, I don't think people recognize it in themselves. You know, they're out of touch with themselves and with the universe. But, you know, I'm just thinking here, I look in your backdrop there, looks like Seminole Canyon to me, which is a canyon kind of halfway between here and San Antonio. It is one of the original homelands of the Royal Murray, who some say are maybe some of the first people. And there's a Seminole National Park. Some of the oldest petroglyphs in the world are there. Maybe you've seen them. And there's a scene in my book that takes place there under this one piece of cave art called the White Shaman. A very famous old work of art by the original people. And it's a holy man, a white shaman, a shaman in a white robe, and he is advancing examples of nourishment, warfare, and community. Three of the sort of the oldest, in many ways, some of the oldest concepts.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's, our DNA all goes back there. None of us. So I can't really answer your question, Lisa, but it's worth thinking, certainly worth thinking about.
Yeah, because I think we have that. We kind of separate ourselves from the animal world. When the animals are already doing this, but we say we're smarter than the animals, that's where we think now. But I think we just haven't really explored more of science. Will keep teaching us, right? And keep changing. And
whale has a 400-pound brain.
Geez.
Yeah. And they're just mythical and such intelligent and interesting creatures.
Yeah.
And character in this book, 52 Blue, is a very intelligent creature.
Just because an animal doesn't act the way we do doesn't make it less intelligent.
Yeah, not at all.
It really doesn't. So I don't know, if somebody goes in and they have, a brain from a badger, and then they have a brain from a wildebeest, one's predator, one's prey, and then they have a brain from a dog raised by humans. What's going to be the difference? Yeah, the size of the brain, how much it has in its brain for so many years of living. Is it that different? I mean, and then if you take a human brain and put it right next to them, okay, bigger brain, does that make it a better brain?
Hummingbirds are smart and they got a tiny brain.
Yeah, so well, I always think it's all, at the end of the day, it's still always based on survival, because it's who we are.
And have we forfeited our right, humans, the preeminent creatures, supposedly, have we forfeited our right to be stewards of the world?
I think we messed up big time. I think a lot of people try, a lot of people don't try. I think the bottom dollar has taken precedence in a lot of ways, which is sometimes negate our ideals and the things that we say we believe in. Like we go to church, we do this, we do that, we worship here, we do this, we do that. But, after an hour at church, come home and do something that you shouldn't have done because you already said you wouldn't do it, but you just did it. Uh-oh.
I think that we are the new kids on the block here still.
Yeah.
I think the indigenous people of the lands. So when I'm not saying that white people are not indigenous people, not of this country, but I mean of other, obviously from other countries. But if you go back to the true indigenous, right, roots, maybe, yeah, there we can go. Okay, sentient beings, absolutely. There were wars too, right? So they fought as well. They were territorial, but animals are as well. But I just think now with the way the world is, I feel like we're still in kindergarten as a species. If we compare species, I know we're going to get emails now, aren't we?
Yeah.
I don't want to mislead your listeners.
Yeah.
This sort of mystical, it's a pretty basic story. And the first sort of the first half of the book, which is before the fall, which the time period between now and 2036, all deals with governance and our leaders. And there's many characters, some real characters. Pete Buttigieg, for example, is in there. Characters whose names are slightly altered, who you might recognize, but there is the president at the time is this sort of, just this kind of radicalized, hard right buffoon who managed to be elected by overturning election results.
You're making me laugh. You're making me laugh.
Yeah. Now,
Nancy kept, I mean, this was Nancy just going, look what Sid just did.
So, and that's, the leaders of the world, climate change, AI, it just all conspires together during the climax of the first part of the book. And as I described earlier, just before nuclear annihilation, hacker group Anonymous intervenes and turns it all off, and that's the end of the world as we know it. And then the second half of the book, so the first part is written in past tense, second part's written in present tense, which is an interesting kind of a writer thing. What tenses, what perspectives, who's telling the story, narrator, is it one character, kind of things I really pay a lot of attention to when I read a book. And those are really profound decisions in how a book is written. First part of the book is in past tense. The second part of the book is all present tense.
And it's interesting to always do that merge into from one to the other, that segue. That's always interesting to read that kind of part. I do have a silly question to ask now, because I know that when we drove through your area a few years back, you guys have a good radio station compared to some parts of the country. I'm just going to say.
You have one of the best. You talking about Marfa Public Radio?
Yes, and I was asking this of a person the other day. Did you turn the radio on? Did you hear about the Marfa lights? And he's like, I don't. What? Like, dude, you can't go there without, like, you have to turn the radio on, because it's one of these few places that we have left in the country that actually have a radio station. Tubac, Arizona has a good. You have to go to the, like, out in the country to get some crazy radio stations, but you do. Is this where you heard the band? Is this how you heard that song? Was it out there or somewhere else?
The song about the whale? Yes, it was a little segment they did. Okay, so allow me to put in a plug for my friends at Marfa Public Radio. Travis Bubinick, Annie Rosenthal, who is a reporter. She grew up in 2 blocks from me in Washington. And Marfa Public Radio is the NPR affiliate here.
Right. Awesome.
So they go back and forth in their newscast between, like, All Things Considered and local news. It's a fabulous, award-winning radio station. And I happen to think that the National Public Radio Network is one of the best and last really straight news sources these
Agreed.
days.
Yeah.
You can get Marfa Public Radio streaming too.
Oh, cool.
You can listen to it anytime you want. But yeah, it's such a great source of news. And
it's awesome.
And very, very smart, very erudite, and above the fray you might think of in a place like West Texas.
Because that's the truth. Awesome. I think it's true. Like the NPR affiliates is what if you go through like a city, you'll get something, or you'll go through a college town. That's when you start to get interesting. Or you go in the backwoods and somebody just, like, a bunch of cool people went there, and like Tubac, like I said, Tubac has this, whereas you get into Tucson, you don't have this. It's weird because it's like not even 45 minutes from each other. How did this happen? And you can be out in the middle, like on the border, out by Aravaca and that area, and you're hearing like somebody like understands the B-side of the album. Like, thank you. That's all I want to say is, like, can we have the B-sides now and not the paid for playlist? And so when you brought that up, I had to, because whenever we find, like, I always search, and I drive us nuts, always searching for what's going on locally.
Local
whether it's
radio. I
newspapers,
love it.
TV, all of it, right? And this day and age, it's even hard to find local TV because everything's streaming. But going through Marfa, I was like, oh, cool. And like you could feel like you were there. They're talking to you, you were there. It was a beautiful night. And then we got into a hailstorm. It was really cool, but it was awesome. I mean, your area is like just, it is that wide open, like desolate, yet it's not desolate. You know, it seems like a fun area too. Like I remember there was a, like some, was it in Marfa? Some restaurant was having a big old party, man. I was like, dude, let's go. We don't have to get anywhere yet, do we? I want to party. So it seems like a good area.
Well, it's a unique, far west Texas, which is the tail end of the Rockies. You know, people don't realize we're in the mountains
Oh,
here.
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Mile high here where I live. It is a very unique slice of the world. I mean, people normally associate Texas with a certain kind of political persuasion, but it's quite progressive out here. Marfa being, you know, a very liberal place. I mean, this is sort of the heart of the whole Willie Nelson, Jerry Jeff Walker, Ray Wiley Hubbard, sort of the Michael Murphy kind of cosmic cowboy scene, Terlingua. And it's really quite progressive in the Tri-County area. But Fort Davis, Alpine, and Marathon. And you know, people will come and visit me and just, it blows their mind. They just don't realize what it's like out here. It's just really a cool place to be. Very interesting place to be. And you're an hour from the Mexican border. I was down in Ojinaga last week to pick something up just across the border, an hour away, listening to Marfa Public Radio. And, yeah, it's just it's a neat spot.
Awesome. Well, it's a pleasure having you back on the show. Nancy's been raving and raving. Yep. She's been raving. Yeah, and she didn't even do her work for a full day reading your book. Just saying.
I read it. Well, because I was drawn into it. I want to ask you one last thing real quick. When you come up with a character, are you looking at people from history? Are you looking at people you know, or people that you just happen to see? Where do you draw the people from? Like, because they're very real.
Yeah. I get that kind of question a lot. I spend a lot of time thinking about my characters. And one of the fun things, again, a sort of a writing thing about a trilogy is that, you know, that has the same characters, several generations, is that going in, you have an idea of what's going to happen to them. I'm very careful about, you know, mapping out what I want for the story, storyboards, et cetera, et cetera. But at a certain point, a character is going to kind of want to do something you hadn't expected, is going to want to sort of grow organically in a certain way that you hadn't anticipated. And you can fight it, or you can just kind of go with it. And that's really what I find the real magic in writing fiction. And my characters, I mean, for example, the president in the first part of the book, Nico Pompadour.
I love that
That's
name.
such a good name. That is such
That so
cool,
cracked me up.
perfect name.
Like,
That
oh,
is so
no.
perfect. That's perfect.
I mean, there's certainly characteristics you see in him of other politicians, right?
Yeah.
So yes, you know, it's sort of a patchwork of people, you know, and you know, you mentioned the strong female characters, and describe it. You know, there's a certain sort of woman, like my mother, in West Texas, and I describe it as who has a way with a petticoat and a 30-30.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah, don't mess with her.
Special breed of human, indigenous to this area. You know, people will also ask me, well, where do you come up with these names? And the first book, it's funny, you may have seen it, there's a big graveyard, big cemetery in Del City, right? And as I'm trying to think of names, I said, well, just go to the cemetery and get some names.
Oh,
I just walk through the cemetery, and just found names and mixed and matched, and that was the bedrock for the names and the characters in my book.
Cool. Oh, well, we'll go to cemetery. We travel to cemeteries. We're weird about it. We go to cemeteries, and we've learned more about historical figures that we didn't know about by going to cemeteries.
They're magical places. They really are, and they're always beautiful.
Yeah, we were actually saying that we're going to start listing them as an actual park because of the peace, because of the nature. They're having to be protected, and they are in dire need of protection and upkeep. A lot of master gardeners go into graveyards and help, with the plants and everything. But in fact, there are people that go and clean gravestones as part of therapy, because if they've messed up in life, they go in, clean up the graves because there's no one doing it. And they clean the grave, whitewash it down or power wash it, do it by hand, maybe even with a toothbrush, delicately, be, careful. And they feel like they're giving back and cleaning up their life through cleaning up someone else's that has been left and lost. So,
well, it's nice to think that might be so.
Yeah. So the graveyard thing is, it's part of history. I mean, we go to graveyards and we always find snakes.
Don't make snakes, please. Okay.
Oh yeah,
we're still looking for the horse, the grave of the horse.
The horse in Coldwater, Michigan. He was in the Civil War, fought 6 battles, I think it was, came out unscathed. And who knew this teeny town in Michigan was the place where they bred horses that were specifically used in the Civil War?
Well, up at the university where I work at Sul Ross State University, part of the Texas system, there's a beautiful bronze sculpture in the middle of it. And what it is, it's a testament to the cavalry, and it's a horse without a rider. And the concept being that the horse will just stand there waiting and not knowing whether his soldier is coming back. And so it's just this slow, sort of windblown, standing alone on the
waiting.
Because we do horse stories across the country too. See, we have all these little things that we do. We have to go there now. We'll have to do that now. Before I forget, when you brought that up, it dawned on me we have to ask this final question. It's like we'll sit and talk to you for hours, Sid. But okay, so the 7th flag. We would be remiss not to get you to explain the 7 flags of Texas. Well, we had just been to Nacogdoches, I think, the first time we talked. And they had 9, right? They had 9 flags, I think.
Well, so everybody knows Six Flags, the amusement park, right?
Right.
Which was originally, as a kid, it's called Six Flags Over Texas. It was an amusement park outside of Dallas, where I grew up. And each section of this park thematically related to one people that ruled, one flag that flew over Texas, whether it be the French or the Spanish or the Mexican. So there's these 6 flags. And the 7th flag, the notion of the 7th flag is that there is a new nationality now, not only in Texas, and this is the 7th flag, this amalgam of cultures and languages and backgrounds that defines what citizenship is in this new world. And of course, you go to the final book, Algorithms, and citizenship boils down to the couple hundred square miles you can defend. No flag. Just all different kinds of people. And so again, what does it mean to be citizen? What is your commitment to your community, to your people, to your family? How do you subsist? And it's brutal in many ways.
Everyone, sidbalman.com is the website, and go get the book. Follow him on his tour as well if you can go to one of his events. So you've got Seventh Flag is the first one, Murmuration and Algorithms. That is out August 1st, 2023, but you can pre-order it now. Keep up with us at bigblendradio.com, and we want to thank our friends over at booksforward.com. They introduce us to the best authors, and we've been working with them, I think, 20 years, even pre-podcasting. So something like that. So everyone, thank you so much. Thank you, Sid. It's good to see you.
Thanks,
And
Sid.
we'll see you when we head southwest of Texas of where we are.
Come on by, sit on my back porch. We'll have a cold beer. I feel like we're old friends now. We've known each other.
Yeah,
long
a few
time
years
now.
now. Yeah.
Intimate conversations, and I sure appreciate you focusing in on my book and giving me this opportunity to talk about it a little bit.
Oh, you bet. You bet. We can't wait for
You
the
bet.
next, and we know you're working on something. So everyone stay tuned for that.
Cool.
But for right now, you've got the trilogy. So get reading.